So let's recap what we went over in the stakeholders section. So we talked about internal and external stakeholders. So we looked at users or stakeholders that are inside of the company and how they differentiate from external and even mixed stakeholders. The next thing we talked about were the lenses. So we looked at some of the thought processes or the heuristics in the way that users think, and then how that subsequently determines how they relate to the organization. We talked about the different devices, or at least some things to be concerned about when looking at the devices used by users. And the last thing we looked at was the software and determining how the software is kind of an intermediary that allows users to connect with the data in the company, and how that is specific to the tasks that the user would need to do in order to facilitate success for the company and facilitate various processes. So some next steps for this section, and we'll go over what this looks like here in just a second. But in the digital experience matrix, you will go through and list out the different stakeholders in the organization. You can list them out individually, or you can even do groups. It's really up to you and the size of your organization and how detailed you want to get. Next, you'll list all of the different lenses for the users and get an idea as to how people think about just different situations within the organization. And the last is to go through the reflection and go through some of the questions there and get a deeper understanding and kind of bring to light some of these things and how they apply to your organization. And then next we will move into Pillar 2, where we'll look at some phases. But real quick, let me pull up the digital experience matrix and show you what that looks like. So this is our digital experience matrix. Here on this tab, we have the dashboard, where as we fill out information, then it'll generate insights for us that we can see with each of the different tabs here at the bottom. We have an options tab, and these are just some things that we can configure to give us other ways of breaking down the information that we'll put in the other tabs. So for example, in our stakeholders tab, we can look at the different relationships that we have for a stakeholder and how they connect with the organization. If we wanted to add or modify those relationships, we could do that here in the options section. In each of the different tabs, we also have ratings, so that way when we build out scenarios, we can get a really good idea as to the weight of that particular situation, and so we can come in and change those ratings here. One thing you will notice in the ratings is there is a nice little easy formula that allows for the counting. You can go in and change that if you want to. You could make it more granular and kind of modify it how you see fit. If you need to, you can click on one of these and then right click, and then we can insert new rows and add into the table here. So if we click on it and then do insert, that'll add in a new row. Likewise, if we didn't want that row, we can click on it, right click, and then we can delete that row. And that's the same for all of these. So if you wanted to add more stakeholders, same thing, we'll just click, right click, and then we'll insert the row, and then we can just keep adding in more stakeholders. The only section you can't add into is the scenarios. There's 100 of them here, and you won't be able to add in anymore. That one's going to be kind of frozen, but in any of the other tabs you'll be able to do that. So for this section, for Pillar 1 and the stakeholders, go through and list the name of the stakeholders. So if you're a smaller company, or if you're doing it for your department, you could look at listing each stakeholder individually and then rate them and determine their relationship. Then you'll have a nice database here of your different stakeholders. If you're looking at doing it for the entire organization, then you could also go by just business unit. So instead of doing stakeholders by individual, we could do one for sales, one for warehouse workers, and so on, and build it out that way. Once you're done with the stakeholders, then go ahead and move over to the lenses. So this is where we're going to look at some ways of how people think. So there might not be an exact name or description for it, but just come up with something that helps you understand and kind of put yourself in the shoes of that stakeholder and how they would see that particular situation. It'll help to show you just the different ways that people think and see and experience in the company. So you'll list them, and then once you list them, you can go and use the ratings. You'll also be able to select any stakeholders that you have listed in the stakeholders list. And then you can also go ahead and select a type as well. And the types are all found in the options menu. And this will just help you get some insights as to which types of stakeholders and lenses are pertinent in your organization. Some things you might need to do too is some lenses might encompass different stakeholders, and so you can do that as well. And just make sure you do the name the same. That way when you go back and filter these, as you can see we can do here at the top, then we can look to see some patterns with the different stakeholders and how people think. And then once you're done with that, then I will see you in the next pillar.